Tina here, and can I say how delighted we are to share with you our thoughts on a subject that we care so passionately about. We are so pleased that you have chosen to join us. We were afraid that you might have your feet up on the sofa tonight, catching up with EastEnders, or that it might clash with your weekly supermarket trip, or your regular date with the shower gel, bath oil, fake tan, or whatever else keeps you going. But no, you have chosen to be here with us for an actual live performance. And that, in a way, is exactly what we want to talk about. Messing around on computers. Computers are amazing, aren't they? There seems to be nothing you can't do on a computer. They save us time, they can run our whole lives. But they can also be a time waster, particularly if all we do on our devices is play games. Game after game after game after game after game, often dripping with blood, and more blood. Violent video games, that's what we're here to debate. Is there a place for them in our modern society, or should they be banned? The question's been asked ever since Space Invaders burst onto the scene in 1978. Was there anything wrong with it then? Is there anything wrong with it now? We'd like you to make up your own minds as you listen to our two speakers. There's no doubt that we live in an increasingly violent world. But will banning video games change anything? Sam Horsfall certainly thinks so. Sam is enthusiastic about everything that he does. He's not afraid to express his own opinions and to think outside the box. And he is the perfect person to explain why violent video games should be banned. We can't wait to hear what he has to say. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sam Horsfall.
It has been said that no man is an island. We are social beings. We need company. I've always had a lot of friends. I love playing sport. And I'm an actor. I'm always part of a group. I've never wanted to play video games. And I'm so glad. Because there can be nothing worse than shutting yourself away and playing endless, mindless games on your own. How can this ever be good for your mental health and well-being? Yet this is increasingly what people do, and unfortunately, it's young people who are affected the most. They're supposed to be fun, but they can also easily have a traumatising effect. Zakina mentioned Space Invaders. How exciting it must have seemed at first, as you chase those little green aliens up and down, with the music getting faster and faster. It was a case of shoot or be killed. And addiction was easy. Just one more game, and another, and another, and another, and a few more by the light of a secret torch. Then school tomorrow, with homework unfinished, feeling exhausted. It's easy to see how the problem can start and how it can escalate. Nowadays, Space Invaders probably seems quite tame. Also, games like Call of Duty, Fortnite, or Grand Theft Auto. All of them involve shooting and hunting down, and a lot of graphic depictions of death. The introduction to a typical game probably says this: raise your fists and prepare to fight to the brutal finish. The battle comes alive with bone-jarring realism as you pummel your opponent and do your utmost to inflict maximum damage. Your fists are fast and your grip is strong, but will it be enough to help you dominate in the ultimate king of the Iron Fist tournament? How can this be acceptable for impressionable young minds? It's advertised for all the family. How can these people distinguish fantasy from reality? Surely it's obvious the desire to try these things out in real life is perhaps overwhelming. About a year ago, my family and I were sitting down to dinner. Someone mentioned my brother's video games, and immediately he stormed off in rage, slamming the door so hard it nearly fell off its hinges. This was anger and aggression at its worst. The only way he was able to react to the criticism was by copying the behaviour he just encountered in GTA. The rest of us were so upset. This just cannot be right. A study by Hannah Coleman has concluded that exposure to violent video games does indeed risk a serious risk for increased aggression, and points out that this is more noticeable in boys rather than girls. With so many men still strutting the world stage, what hope is there for the future? Pullman also highlights a decline in pro-social behaviour, things like empathy, cooperation, sharing and teamwork. We cannot expect to survive in isolation, literally fighting for our own corner all the time. Wonder there is so much war and unhappiness in the world. One thing that concerns me greatly is that no two people are alike. I feel that I could be and have been exposed to violent video games without suffering too much. Well, I know that wasn't the same for my brother. Another study by Patrick Markey has concluded that the most dangerous effects of these games are felt by those who have pre-existing issues. They may feel anger anyway because of circumstances or life experience, but I believe it's a crime to risk their mental health still further. There is no doubt that these video games, especially violent ones, will never make someone more creative, nor more intelligent. Violence breeds violence, and the repetitive nature of violent actions can only lead to attempts to reproduce this behaviour in real life. I firmly believe that these despicable, aggravating, and perhaps suicidal games should be banned once and for all, and I urge you in campaigning to help me make this happen. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sam, for that impressive speech, which I'm sure has made a huge impact. I certainly wouldn't want to meet your brother after he's been playing Grand Theft Auto, nor would I want to be anywhere near the door that he slammed in rage. Your personal experience clearly supports what the study showed, and I'm sure our audience will bear that in mind. But of course, there are two sides to this argument. And I'd now like to introduce Adrian Muru, who is desperate to convince us that there is no reason for video games to be banned. He believes that they are not a problem in themselves, and that a ban will do nothing except enrage people and cause even more aggression and anger. Adrian's lively personality and unique style is infectious. In all his lessons, he's the first to put up his hand with an answer and has a way with words that never fails to impress. Another one of his strengths is his determination. Once he's made up his mind, no one can change it. That's what Adrian is hoping for tonight, to use the debating skills he shows in English lessons to convince you to side with him and then stick to it. So, enough of me. It's time now to hand you over to the mesmerizing Adrian Muru.
Greetings, all you groups. Whether you're a noob or a scrub, let's get good and go for a gang for a bit of aggro. You may not know that video games come with their own vocabulary, but I know it all, as I've been playing video games since I was just 4 years old. I reckon I spent over 5,000 hours playing video games over the last couple of years, and look at me, I have survived. I don't regret 1 minute of it, and I can honestly say that I've never once felt the need to get violent or cause harm to someone just because I got mad at them or felt like it. Not everyone is like me, but surely my experience counts for something. You've all heard Sam tonight. He thinks that video games can only lead to more aggressive personality changes and more violence. Well, I disagree. Do I look violent? I'll leave you to make your own mind up about that. Video games are bad for you? That's what they said about rock and roll. The words of Shigeru Miyamoto, a game director of the famous Nintendo company. What does he mean? Well, cast your minds back. Some of you in here might remember the old days of rock and roll, with your drainpipe trousers and blue suede shoes, greasing your hair and flashing your flick knife. It was you, wasn't it? Causing your parents all that grief. In the 1950s, people really did think that this new music would lead to juvenile delinquency, that simply listening to rock around the clock would affect the levels of violence in society and lead to a rise in the crime rate. Let's be honest. 60 years later, we all know that all the hysteria was just an overreaction. Look at the list of top songs from the 1960s and you'll find My Old Man's a Dustman. Not exactly an anthem to violence, is it? For me, it's the same with video games. There may be potential for violence, but the reality is very different. Sam taught us a lot about studies showing that the angry vibe of many video games is easily transferred to our brains and emotions. Well, Sam, you're not the only one who's been doing some research, because I've been reading about functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI for short. It's possible to evaluate blood flow in the brain so that variations in brain activity can be picked up when there are tiny chemical changes in the blood. It's an incredible technology that means we can identify emotions that we are experiencing while doing certain tasks. The experts have found that playing video games can actually relieve stress and calm us down. Just like rock and roll, it gives us a place to express ourselves and let out all the negative feelings before returning to reality with a greater sense of calm. For those of you who like statistics, it is reckoned that 91% of kids play video games. What's more, 90% of all popular games are classed as violent. That means there must be a huge number of violent young criminals running around here. Have you seen them here tonight? No, I didn't think so. Some tests have shown an increase in impulsiveness, but not violent aggression. Nothing to prove that people have gotten anger issues or tried to inflict violence on others. There was one study which followed 324 primary school children for over a year. It found that those who were aggressive at the start were helped by developing a love and passion for the video games they were exposed to. Far from bringing an increase in violence, this was actually a positive effect. One of the most well-known violent video games is Grand Theft Auto, which seems to have caused a problem for Sam's brother and the door hinges. This study, however, showed that because the game involved sharing money and working together, it helps develop important life skills like teamwork and empathy. It's the same with first-person shooters, where you need visual and listening skills to react quickly and plan your strategy. So to conclude, video games can be a force for good. I hope I've made my point, ladies and gentlemen, and that there is no need for a ban. One final thought. From around standing, you'll look as though your visual, listening, reacting, and strategic skills are looking just fine. In other words, you'll look to me as an experienced team of gamers. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Adrian, for that amazing speech, which certainly gives us something else to think about. Adrian's research suggests that if you go home and decide that one final round of GTA might be better than a late-night cup of cocoa, you might be, in fact, releasing some of that pent-up aggression, and therefore may sleep more soundly. I was particularly struck by Adrian's reference to the worries parents once had about rock and roll. It may be indeed that all our fears will prove to be groundless. Let's hope so anyway. In the meantime, we must make up our own minds about where we stand on this important issue. If you belong to the generation that thinks Space Invaders is all about the first Russians in space in the 1960s, or the first Americans in the moon, you can be forgiven for thinking that this has nothing to do with you. But think again. What is at stake here is the safety and mental well-being of the young people who are part of your future. For them, we have to decide whether Fortnite is a fun-filled fantasy or whether it fans the flames of fear and fatality. Life is not a game, ladies and gentlemen, but to use the language of games, it's your turn next. And you may only get one chance to hit the jackpot. We have to shoot, we have to win, we have to protect our future. Think about it carefully, and good night.
Well done.
Oh, well done, you three. Two teams from Trevelyan tonight, and both were exceptionally high quality. It's lovely to see. I used to go to Trevelyan as well, so I've got real connections with all these schools. It's really wonderful. Video games. I think the opening comments from you were great, and thanking us for coming out here. And is it Sakina? Was it? Yeah, very well chaired. A rose between two thorns in this table, and you set up the debate very nicely. And Sam, as soon as you stood, before you'd even told us you were an actor, I just wrote an actor. You could tell from the way your body language, which you've mentioned before, the way you viewed us as an audience. You had a purpose behind what you were saying. You didn't just want to deliver a speech. You wanted you wanted to deliver a speech actually, and ran it home to us. And I thought, wow, that's going to be difficult to beat. And then, Adrian. Wow, you certainly met a match there. We had two actors, I think, really kind of taking to the stage, and your use of, again, your body language and your pitch, pace, and tone for the both of you. It was a tour de force, I suppose, on an acting scale. The content is tricky, and I think certainly as a teacher in education, I know the impact that devices can have. video games or not, we actually use video games in our curriculum to teach, because I think there are parts of it which are very useful. And you're right, you know, I agree with elements of both your conversations. I think mobile phones are probably the hardest thing about addiction. Certainly, that's the thing that you carry with you all the time. So it was a great debate, and well done as a team. I thought all of you were exceptional. What did you think, Jonas?
Yeah, 2 years or so ago, I was exactly where you are, representing Trevelyan, and may I just say, both of your teams have, I'm sure, made the school proud. You had compelling delivery and great anecdotes, and overall it was a great performance. At times, you could afford to slow down, but other than that, it was amazing.
Yeah, I think it was definitely very confident and well performed, and I like the personal anecdote and the way that you sort of referenced it throughout as well. I also liked your use of statistics, and I agree the chair was really, really well performed.
Yeah, yet again, absolutely amazing. I like the narratives you told, they're really engaging. I was engaged throughout, and I felt like with the descriptions I could properly imagine what you were trying to depict. So the arguments are amazing. So I'm sure we all agree that you should stick with debating, because you're absolutely wonderful.
Brilliant, thank you.